Good morning, Chairman.
Good morning, Rachel, and good morning and welcome to the virtual meeting of the Flood and Water Management Scrutiny Committee. My name is Councillor Paul Skinner and I am the chairman of the committee. This is a formal public meeting and the audio feed of this meeting is being broadcast via the County Council's website. I would like to welcome the members of the press and the public who are listening to this meeting online. Before we begin, I'd like to confirm who is present. Rachel Wilson, the Democratic Services Officer, will ask members to indicate their presence and their name is called. Sorry, when their name is called. When invited to speak, you should unmute your microphone and switch on your video. When not participating in the meeting, please could you ensure that you are muted and you switched off your video. This will help the bandwidth for everybody. Thank you. Rachel.
Thank you, Chairman. When I call councillors' names, can they just confirm that they're present? Councillor Aaron.
Present.
Councillor Ashley Morris. Councillor Ashton.
Present.
Councillor Mrs. Alison Austin.
Present.
Councillor Andrew Hakes.
Present.
Councillor Mrs. Lawton.
Present.
Councillor Oxby.
Present.
Councillor Parkin, I think she's having connection issues. Councillor Christopher Reid. Councillor Robert Reid. Councillor Robert Reid. Sorry, Councillor, you're still muted.
Apologies, present.
Thank you. We also have the following district councillors. Councillor Richard Austin.
Present.
Councillor Helen Crawford.
Present.
Councillor Ian Fleetwood.
Present.
Councillor Mrs. Fiona Mountain.
Present.
Councillor Michael Seymour.
Present.
Councillor Pat Vaughan. Thank you, Chairman.
And Councillor Mrs. Lucille Hakes is here.
Oh, apologies. Yes, Councillor Hakes.
Thank you.
Councillor Reid as well.
Thank you.
Sorry, I had some connection issues.
No problem.
Right, we'll move on to the next stage. Thank you, Rachel. I'd like to ask the committee members and other participants to type in speak when you wish to ask the question. And requests to speak will be collated by Robert, my vice chairman. Please can you keep your questions and contributions succinct? Also, just a reminder, please turn your camera and microphone off when not participating. Can I also ask the members who are intending to leave the meeting to indicate via the chat function? Officers do not need to do so. We can now move on to the formal agenda. Rachel, do we have any apologies?
I haven't received any apologies, Chairman.
Thank you. We'll move on to item 2 then. Do members have any interest to declare? If so, please type speak in the meeting chat below.
Chairman, we have Councillor Fleetwood wishes to speak for declarations.
Councillor Fleetwood.
Thank you, Chairman. I don't know if I declared last time or how recent my latest appointment is, but I am now a member of the Scunthorpe and Gainsborough Water Management Board. It might be the Gainsborough and Scunthorpe. I can never remember which way round it is, but one or the other. It's equivalent to the IDB that covers the area of the area east side of the Trent, going up to Scunthorpe, covering down to Gainsborough.
Thank you very much for that. Right, moving on to item 3. This item to confirm the minutes of the previous meeting held on the 30th of November 2020 as a correct record. I'm quite happy to propose them. Seconded.
Quite happy, Chairman, to second them.
Thank you very much. Then can we move on to Rachel? Will you call out each name alphabetically to ask whether for or against?
Yes, Chairman. Councillor Aaron. Councillor Aaron, can you say for against? For. Councillor Ashley Morris. Councillor Ashton. Councillor Ashton. Councillor Mrs. Alison Austin.
For.
Councillor Andrew Higgs.
For.
Councillor Mrs. Lawton.
For.
Councillor Ron Oxby.
For.
Councillor Parkin. Councillor Parkin, can you state if you're for, against or abstain on the minutes? Oh. Councillor Christopher Reid.
Abstain, I wasn't there.
Thank you. Councillor Robert Reid.
For.
Councillor Richard Austin. Councillor Richard Austin.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Helen Crawford.
For.
Councillor Fleetwood.
For.
Councillor Mrs. Martin.
For.
Councillor Seymour. Councillor Seymour. I think they're carried, Chairman.
Obviously, I proposed them, so I was for as well. Thank you very much, Rachel. Moving on then to item 4.
Chairman, just before we do, I understand Councillor Sarah Parkin's now with us.
Thank you. Sarah, can you hear us?
Oh, she's got to retry again, apparently.
Oh, bless. Right, we'll move swiftly on then. Announcements by Chairman, Executive Councillors and Lead Officers. Obviously, since November, we've had rather a wet spell again, which has once again tested all of our resilience. Do we have any of the Executive Councillors to make any announcements, Rachel?
I don't think anyone's with us today.
Thank you for that.
Anybody?
David? Sorry.
I can't see anybody logged on the meeting, Chairman, of the Executive Councillors either.
Okay, thank you for that. David, is there anything you'd like to bring it to the fore?
Thank you, Chairman. No, I think all the main items we would want to cover are included on the agenda.
Excellent. Thanks for that, David.
Sorry that for a few minutes ago I managed to drop out of somewhere. I had to restart.
Okay.
Councillor Skinner, can I apologise? I've had technical difficulties with my daughter's IT equipment for homeschooling today, and then technical difficulties with my own being able to hear you all, so I do apologise.
Well, we can hear you loud and clear now, so we're quite happy. We all know about working from home, and we have a day here where we have two people working for the health service, and I have to compete for the airwaves as well. So very much understand that.
Yeah, thank you.
Very welcome. So we move on to item 5, and this item sets out the Development Fund for Drainage Investigations, Flood Repairs, its progress, the government's document and programme of works that were approved by the Executive on the 2nd of February 2021. The report will be presented by Matthew Harrison, who is the Senior Commissioning Officer, Flood Risk. Just a reminder, if you'd like to speak on this item, please type in speak to the chat line. If we're struggling with that, Robert, we'll get over it somehow.
We will.
Matthew Harrison, please continue.
Thank you, Chairman, and good morning, everybody. Hopefully you can hear and see me. Yeah, thank you for that introduction. As you say, this report is to provide an update to the committee on the progress with the Development Fund for Drainage Investigations and Flood Repairs. On the 2nd of February, a governance document for overseeing this programme of work and the programme of work itself was approved by the executive. If I may, I will take the report as read, but just pick out on some of the pertinent points, and afterwards more than happy to elaborate on any aspects of that and take questions. So, funding to the value of £2.2 million has been made available to address drainage and flooding issues in the county, and a programme of work has been developed in conjunction with the floods team and the highways teams. And I shall be overseeing this programme between these two service areas and providing reports as necessary. So this work is to be completed by March 2022. And as it indicates, the work is not only to deliver things on the ground, but it is also an opportunity to fund detailed investigation work for troublesome spots, as it were, in the county, where we need to determine a detailed drainage programme before any works can actually take place on the ground. This programme is a combination of two things. It is for taking forward investigation, but also hopefully to deliver some meaningful work on the ground to solve some localised drainage issues as well. So this programme of work does align with a very detailed highways asset and drainage programme that is being delivered under the term highways contract. So this is in additional work to that. And these are some of the schemes that otherwise wouldn't have been able to have been brought forward so quickly. So this will hopefully now start to bring some real positive benefits to the communities in the county. And is, I think we will all agree, is very much welcomed, particularly with the recent issues of weather events that we've had. The governance document outlines how we will be overseeing this programme of work, and regular meetings have already taken place, and updates will be filtered back through to senior managers and members as required to keep you updated on how the programme is developing. There are several schemes now that are well underway with investigative work. And also some work has already been completed to the value of around £350,000. And that includes a contribution, and in addition to that is a contribution of £150,000 to the steeping works around Wainfleet following the floods in June 2019. And as we know, that's a real positive programme of work taking place in that area as well. So there has also been support for that programme. I will perhaps stop there if that's okay, Chairman. But as I say, more than happy to elaborate on any aspects and answer any questions that members may have. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Really welcome this. It's really a good boost. You've mentioned Wainfleet. One of the chairman's and the vice chairman's wishes that we address the items that were put out by Lewis Strange when he was chairman prior to all this happening. So I would very much look forward to an update of that sometime. It looks like Ian's got some questions.
Thank you. It's not necessarily about Wainfleet, and I applaud all the excellent work that's going together to support Wainfleet, as indeed I can now say that the Environment Agency, judging from the road at Short Ferry, seem to have done a river repair, though I am slightly concerned that on the top of the banks of the Barlings in recent times of heavy rainfall, there have been sandbags placed across the top of the banks in several strategic positions, and that does concern me. So I think that's one for Morgan to think of a little later on. But for Matt, I'm more concerned in other areas of my county division, and I note that Cherry Willingham is going to get some funding towards a flood scheme. If somebody can give me a little more detail on that, at the bottom of the village. But there is also a place called Little Cherry at the top of the village, which is a small hamlet effectively to the main village. And at that location, we have an awful lot of water running from a new building site and collecting on the side of the road, filling the road up to halfway across the carriageway, and nobody seems to want to get anything put together. Now, whether this is a developer issue, county council issue because it's highways, or a planning enforcement issue at the district needs to be resolved. But I think all three need their heads clanging together to try and get something sorted through on that one. So how are you actually managing to work between the three organisations? How are we trying to get some joined up thinking going is what I'm trying to establish. And if it's not happening at the moment, can we ensure that something does happen in the very near future?
Would you like to come back, Matthew?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. And yes, thank you for that question. We actually have a progress meeting. I actually have a progress meeting following on from committee this morning, where we'll be getting the latest updates. And I know Cherry Willingham is actually progressing quite well with some of the investigative work through our technical services partnership, but I will be able to update more on that after today. So I'm more than happy to engage and update with that. I think the item that you refer to there in Cherry Willingham is perhaps separate from the main drainage investigation work that's taking place. I'm more than happy to raise that at our meeting this afternoon. And obviously, if there's connections that we can make to the programme and make sure that we can address issues whilst on site, or if identify any linkages, obviously we will do. So could you just clarify that location again, please, in Cherry Willingham, and I'll make sure that's raised at our meeting this afternoon.
Yes, it's at a junction between the Hawthorne Road and effectively the new estate, not far from the Lincoln bypass. As you go from the Lincoln bypass towards Cherry Willingham, there is a very small cul-de-sac that's locally known as Little Cherry. On one side of the road is Reetham Parish, and on the other is Cherry Willingham Parish. So at the beginning, on the right-hand side, where the new development is being built, and there's about 150 houses, I think, all the water seems to run down the road, collects at the junction, but it doesn't go away, and it's going into residents' gardens, it's going across the road and forming a large basin. If you want me to expand a little further now, I've got the microphone, I will commandeer the meeting. I also have another issue at a little village called Stainfield, where there is a vast amount of water collecting around Parkgate cottages, which are two cottages beside the beck, which is maintained, I believe, in a fashion by the Environment Agency. But there is a volume of water that appears to be coming off the highway into the residents' garden and basically bringing it to a level where these cottages are either flooding or very nearly flooding. So that's another one I'd like to look into as well, please. I went there a couple of weeks ago and certainly it was a welly full basis at that point. If you want to talk to me outside the meeting rather than me commandeering the whole meeting, you're quite welcome to do so.
That'd be very good if you can, Matthew. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Fleetwood, and thank you, Chair. I will pick up some of those because certainly Stainfield hasn't been identified within the Development Fund, but I am, as I say, mindful that there is an extensive programme of other highway works running alongside this, so I would just wish to cross-reference with Highways colleagues whether anything is being picked up there, but certainly happy to take both of those inquiries forward.
Thank you. Robert, do we have any other speakers?
Yes, you have myself, followed by 3 others, Chairman.
Would you like to ask away?
Thank you. Thank you very much, Chairman. Hello, Matthew, and it's good to see you with us. It's interesting and supportive to see the £2 million capital programme that is coming forward. Indeed, with the investment that's actually shown within the appendix, showing the itinerary as Appendix B does on page 21. And I'm sure it'll draw comfort to a lot of councillors right across our county as to looking into and remedial benefits that are much needed. My main concern is more to the 200,000 that is going to be made available for flood defences. Now, I'm well aware that the leader at Full County Council on Friday did actually allude to some partial information on that, and that is that the money will be available for sandbags and indeed for some new technology, possibly emplacement of sandbags. So my first question, as I understand also, is that whereby which the horrendous situation we had to deal with in December, we had to rely very heavily on district councillors. We understand that the rollout of sandbags through this monetary amount will be somehow done by distribution of parish councillors. So I'd like to know where the progress is on that, and I'd also be very interested to learn of the new technology. Thank you.
I think have you got some information on that, David?
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, those questions are dealt with item 7.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, much of the details still to be worked through.
Okay, thank you. Are you happy, Robert?
Yeah, I'm quite happy to go with that. It's just where they first come up in the agenda, Chairman. That's fine.
Okay, that's fine. Who else have we got?
Yeah, can I suggest that you now ask Councillor Sarah Parkin to speak?
Sarah, would you like to come in?
Yeah, thank you very much, Councillor Skinner. Matthew, it's a similar question, really, in a way that follows on from Councillor Fleetwood's. Again, it was about how we feed into you individual intelligence, our own intelligence about our own division, and help our parishes link into this scheme. Again, I've got a similar sounding problem in Legbourne in terms of housing that has increased, tipped over the capacity of what was originally put there under the original planning agreement. And so it was just, what mechanisms are there for us to feed into this work programme?
Yeah, okay, so yeah, thank you for that, Councillor Parkin. Yeah, so just to clarify, this has been a set budget that has to be delivered by March 2022, this £2.2 million. And the programme of work that has been approved is that to take forward. So there is little, if any, scope to add into this particular programme because that is set. And what I should stress is this is all being delivered within existing resources as well through the Highways term contract, through Highways colleagues. So it is a challenge, to be perfectly honest, to have this programme delivered because we haven't been able to obtain additional resource as welcome as the financial contribution is, of course. But it is a challenge to deliver this because we will be utilising existing resources. So this programme is quite well set and established, so there's little movement in this. However, obviously any drainage issues, flooding issues that come up, they can be addressed through the local drainage groups that sit, through Highways colleagues if it's a Highways matter. So please don't sit on any issues that you might be aware of. Please bring them forward and to meetings like this, and we can make sure that there's the appropriate people look into those, but maybe just not within the development programme is all I'm saying.
Okay. Thank you, Matthew. It is an issue that I've raised with the Highways manager previously, but maybe if we could arrange to have if I could email you, Matthew, about it
yes,
outside the meeting, would that be okay?
It will, and I'm more than happy then to advise how or who can best take that inquiry forward for you. Okay.
Really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Matthew. I'll just add in there in support that Paul Brooks has been collating with all the other partners quite a lot of the near misses. So a lot of this information we need. So these near misses are all collated. Who do we have next then, Robert?
Councillor Andrew Haigh.
Andrew?
Thank you, Chairman. A couple of questions for you, if I may, Matthew. Can you give us an idea of what the 150,000 contribution to the River Steeping catchment area, what work was included? And my second question is, what constitutes work getting onto this budget anyway? Is it just flooding of properties rather than external flooding? And how do those schemes move up the ladder? Is it due to the length of time or the number of times that they've had issues? Is it as many properties can be saved for the money, or is it the cost of effectively the cost of insurance to those individual properties? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that question, Councillor Higgs. So first and foremost, the works around the Steepen Catchment following the flooding in June 2019, that contribution was to help support the Catchment Action Plan that has been developed for the Steepen Catchment following the floods. And that contribution went to some of the work that has been delivered with the suction dredging that's been happening along the channel there, around Wainfleet, and supporting some of the ongoing programme of work that the IDB and the Environment Agency are carrying out. So that has helped to help deliver and accelerate some of that programme of work that we all wish to see take place there. With regards to the programme of work itself and the identification of schemes, a lot of these have been identified by highways colleagues, but also within the floods team. And it's areas where we are aware of flooding or drainage issues, not necessarily to property. Some of this is affecting highway and drainage systems and causing issues to the carriageway. So it isn't just property. This is a combination of things. And what it is it's a programme of work where these schemes really need some attention, but may, under normal circumstances, may not have been able to have been brought forward as quickly as they can. So this funding has really unlocked the potential to bring these problem areas forward to try and address the issues that we have in these areas. So, as I say, some of it will be actually to determine investigating the problem, because some of these are very quite large and complex issues that are being caused, and not all may include various organisations as well. So it's the funding to be able to do the detailed investigation work to really establish what the issues are, so that a programme of work could be taken forward in the future. And some of it will be actually to deliver solutions on the ground. So it's a combination of factors for this programme. Does that go some way to answering your question? More than happy. If I haven't, please tell me.
Okay, one more question, if I may, Chairman.
Please.
Matthew, do we have any additional staff to carry out these investigations, or are we able to cope with the existing staff that we have?
This will all be delivered under existing staff and existing contracts. So most of this work will be delivered under the existing highways term maintenance contract. We've got support from our technical services partnership colleagues who are working on 8 schemes at the moment and making really good progress on those. But this is all being dealt with within existing resources. So the programme will be tight. It will be a challenge to deliver it because it will be in with existing resources. But the discussions that I'm having with our highways colleagues, the maintenance contractor, I'm encouraged to think that we can deliver this programme effectively as things stand. Any changes, anything that happens, we will keep committee informed and we will make decisions appropriately through the proper channel. But at the moment, we are hopeful that we can deliver the full programme of work presented to you today.
Thank you, Matthew. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Matthew. Who's next, Robert?
Councillor Alison Austin, please.
Thank you, Robert. Thank you, Chairman. Right, first of all, I really welcome the, shall I say, the last one, the penultimate scheme on page 22, the 200,000 being set aside in the centre of Curtin for a very, very long-standing issue that floods regularly internally. One dwelling and 2 businesses, both of which are food businesses. And I know that already the investigations have started and a potential problem has been found, but of course it'll be an expensive job to rectify it. So I welcome that. That's a very positive start. I'm unsure whether everything on here has come from the Section 19 investigations or not, because they are surely only for internal flooding, aren't they? And yet someone is saying, well, they're just highways matters. So I have 2 more issues, one also within Curtin, which has at one stage it's sort of in the back, somewhat down the priorities because it's several years ago now, but it's an ongoing issue, which I think is probably going to need ambient water because it's sewage, first of all, on the road, but two properties or 2 or 3 properties have had to have it pumped out. But the last few times it's not quite been there. Now, that sort of thing, because it's almost certainly ambient water, my first question is, would that be appropriate? Should this sort of fund be available in the future? And then I have another question after that.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Austin. Yes, that could well be appropriate if this funding is to continue into the future. We don't know yet, but we are hopeful that if this becomes an effective programme to deliver this work, we are hopeful that future funding could become available to continue this sort of good work. You mentioned the Section 19s. The programme of work that you see isn't directly linked to Section 19s. This sometimes falls out of that. The Section 19s will be being investigated through the floods team. And so that piece of work will be carrying on alongside of this, as I say, as will any other highway flooding works that are being picked up by the highway asset or highway network teams. So this is a programme that is running alongside existing programme of work and investigation. It isn't to replace that by any means. This is very much in addition to. So the Section 19 work will continue and be investigated through the floods team, and any work that comes out of that will obviously be put forward under that budgeted programme of work through the floods team.
Right, and then if I can pick up then with my third point, which is not far away, it's actually in Frampton this time, but it's one that really came to a head, I think. Oh, I can't remember what it was for, just after Christmas, I think. And it's not internal flooding, it's on an estate, and highways have in fact located a blockage, but how they solve it is another matter. And it's not a through road, so you see it's not a main road, so it's put down the list of priorities from that point of view. But of course it's quite serious to the people who live there, and well up into their gardens, but not into any properties. Do we keep on pushing that one through highways, even though the blockage is not actually on the highway, the blockage, but it is the surface water that comes onto the highway that is, they've located a blockage some 50, 60 metres down someone's garden, and but that still is something that should be pushed and potentially can be picked up by this sort of programme should it happen in the future. Is that the case?
I think sorry, excuse me. I think there, Councillor Austin, if you've opened up dialogue with highways, I would continue to do so under the current circumstances to do that. As I say, I do have a progress meeting for the development fund that we're presenting here today later this afternoon, but I can check whether there is anything that has been identified by highways on either the asset or network team programme that they will be running alongside this. So I can check that for you with regards to Frampton. As regards any future works, future funding, that would depend if there was any funding available forthcoming beyond 2022. But clearly, beyond that, yes, we would be looking at areas that, again, need accelerating and bringing forward that may not otherwise get the opportunity to do so if funding wasn't available. So, very much so. But I must stress that would be very much dependent on if any additional funding beyond that available through the usual highway terms maintenance contract and flooding works programme was made available to us. And at the moment we don't know that, and this programme of work is just running through to March 2022. But let's hope that might come to fruition in the future, because it really does have the opportunity to deliver some good benefits to local communities.
Right. Well, we've obviously, excuse me, coming back, we've obviously capitalising on the fact that you're here this morning with this particular agenda item, but it's something that may seem trivial, but it is not when you see that the whole tarmac estate road has got washed away down to the bare concrete now. Yes, thank you.
No problem. And as I say, Chairman, more than happy to take these inquiries away, and if I can provide any updates for members, I certainly will do.
Right.
Thank you, Matthew.
Thank you.
Who do we have next, Robert?
The last speaker we have is Councillor Christine Lawton.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Like Councillor Austin, I'm taking advantage of your presence here, Matthew. The problem I have is a long-standing one. It is to do with one of our sheltered housing complexes in South Holland. It's been recognised by County in 2019 that it's their responsibility, but they said there wasn't the budget to address it. So if I could just forward you the details, I recognise it probably won't come within this programme, but under Section 19. But if I could forward the details to you, I would be most grateful. We've tried lower down the scale, if I may put it that way. So if I can just forward the details to you and see if you can help in any way, I'd be most grateful. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Christine.
Again, more than happy, Chairman, to take that away and provide information as and when is appropriate. Okay, thank you, Councillor Lawton.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the presentation, Matthew.
One further speaker just indicated, Councillor Bill Aaron.
Oh, go on then, Bill. Sorry.
Yes, sorry about that, Chairman. I pressed the wrong button to start.
You're most welcome.
Yeah, I was pleased to see you'd got this development fund because Paul Brooks had started a survey in Horncastle, but then I believe funding was a problem. So I did look to see if we're back on this development fund, but cannot see that. It is, Horncastle's got a huge capacity problem. So, you know, I'm hoping that we will be able to be put back on course sooner rather than later. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bill.
Yes, if I may, Chair, just to clarify, Horncastle isn't on this particular programme of work for the Development Fund, but obviously you've been having discussions there with Paul Brooks, and we can make sure that, you know, those discussions still take place and you provide with appropriate updates again on Horncastle. So, yeah, we're happy to take that away.
Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Bill. Any more, Robert?
No, we're there, Chairman.
You've had a rush on your popularity, Matthew. Thanks once again for doing a real good report. On this one, we're asked to note it, and there's no need for a formal vote unless anybody dissents. So I will move that we receive the report and note the progress with the Development Fund for the Drainage Investigations and Flood Repairs, and that we receive a progress report at our meeting on the 20th of September, and subsequently regular ones up to the completion of the grant. I'm really welcome this, and it sounds a lot of money, but spread over the whole of Lincolnshire, unfortunately, gets thin, particularly when we start looking at issues that have been discussed with riparian drains and other issues that get quite complex, and also from the point of view as an agricultural based engineer, the types of soils that we look for green runoff rate can be quite variable, and these, if it's rank clay for instance, will actually provide us with quite a lot of problems. And Alison Austin mentioned the problems in Curtin. They're the opposite end of the scheme because they're actually on running silt. So we've got a lot of different soil types within our county, all provide us with quite a challenge. So what I'm going to ask now, does anybody dissent from having extra money, basically? Have we got any dissent at all, Robert?
No, we haven't. We've got Councillor Ian Fleetwood prepared to second if it needs to go to a vote, but there's no indication of anybody wishing to dissent.
Right, so therefore I'll take it that it's all agreed, which is excellent. Thanks very much for a really informative report, Matthew. Thank you, members, for challenging Matthew. I think that was a really good debate. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, everybody.
You're welcome. Let's move on to item 6, which is Flood and Coastal Resilience Innovation Programme. And this provides progress on the development submission on behalf of the Greater Lincolnshire Partnership of an expression of interest in the DEFRA Flood and Coastal Resilience Innovation Programme. Once again, a really positive item. And Paul Brooks, can you present, please?
Thank you, Chairman. Good morning, everybody. I hope you can hear me okay. Thank you for that introduction, Chairman. You more or less stole my thunder there, but I'll just reiterate that this is an update to committee just to inform members about the submission of an expression of interest on behalf of Lincolnshire County Council and other partners in making up a Greater Lincolnshire partnership. The expression of interest is for the chance to draw down a share of £200 million of DEFRA funding, which is aimed at 25 areas of England. Within the funding rules, an area is not defined, but we've, as part of our submission, we've identified Greater Lincolnshire, which includes North Lincolnshire and North East Lincolnshire, making up the area we're interested in. And the expression of interest is for the chance to draw down a grant to develop a business case for further funds to support practical actions to deliver flood resilience in an innovative way. So it's the first step in what could be a potentially long process. In essence, the innovation programme will help identify actions which can provide value for money resilience, and that can be implemented in other areas. So really it's part of a national research programme, I suppose, just to help identify what can be done well, and where it can be applied elsewhere. So although we're looking at Greater Lincolnshire as a whole geographical area, we'll be looking at particular locations where we can implement actions and then understand how they can be rolled out elsewhere. The report that's presented outlines the aims and objectives of the Flood and Coastal Resilience Innovation Programme. The partners involved in our expression of interest, and as you'll see, they're from a broad range of organisations and sectors. And there's also guidance in the report on what are eligible actions in order to be to qualify for the funding. But these actions are by and large traditional or well understood measures, but the innovation will be demonstrated by how they're actually delivered and implemented. So the first step in that, I believe, is the creation in a relatively short period of time of a Greater Lincolnshire partnership, looking at how we can deliver those eligible actions. That I think is innovative in itself. It's not something that's done elsewhere in the country to a large degree. We've talked a lot about the actual Lincolnshire flood risk management and water management partnership, how that is very much ahead of the curve. We've expanded on that to create the Greater Lincolnshire Partnership. As it says in the report, the emphasis is on groundwater and understanding the flood risk from groundwater and what mitigation might be appropriate or achievable, feasible, technically achievable, and how that can also benefit other areas such as agri-food, in terms of abstraction and water security, as well as benefits to ecology and the environment, the wider environment. So there's quite a lot in that paper. Just giving you a brief overview there. Quite happy to take questions, but I'm hopeful that the committee will be supportive of the progress that's been made, and as we go forward, hopefully we'll be successful in our bids, and look forward to receiving continued support.
Thank you, Paul. That was quite succinct, because there's quite a lot in that paper. Robert, do we have anybody?
We don't have anybody other than myself, Chairman. I waited to the very last to see if anybody wanted to say anything first.
Please go ahead, sir.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. Well, this really is on the words hoping of success. I'm sure, Chairman, you join along with every other committee member that we've all got our fingers crossed on this one, Paul. And we very much hope that we will receive one of these allocations and that we'll be able to use it just as you've quite rightly described. It's not just about flooding, it's about ecological and environmental and various other aspects right the way across the board. And I sincerely hope that we will be here to support it as the programme develops, and hopefully good news will prevail. I've now got Chairman Alison Austin that would like to comment next.
Please do, Alison. Come to the
Thank
screen.
you. I'll make this quite quick. I just wondered why you selected what was it, North Kesteven and East Lindsey. Obviously, some of us like South Holland and ourselves in Boston always are very keen to get on any bandwagon that's going. But I see Councillor Lawton smiling. They're obviously, we mustn't be greedy. I accept that, but I wondered what your criteria were. Thank you.
If I may, Chairman,
Please do.
it was a sort of organic, I suppose, creation of the group. In the event of a successful bid, I'm absolutely convinced that we will be opening up membership of the group to include other areas where there's an interest in the work that we're trying to do, and helping us to develop actions and ultimately deliver actions as well. So no, it's not deliberately excluding people we don't wish to be involved in. It's really the practicalities at the time of creating the group. But as I say, as we move forward, we'll be looking to include a greater number of people to help us develop and deliver actions. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Any other speakers?
Yes, Chairman. The last one indicating at the moment is Councillor Christine Lawton.
Please go ahead, Christine.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I'm so pleased the discrimination against South Holland is not deliberate. I'm positive it wasn't. That reassurance goes a long way. I'm just interested in the community and voluntary sector action. Help communities to become better prepared to manage their own risk. I'd like to just an idea of what the better preparation could be to manage own risk, and also action should encourage new behaviours in community resilience. I wonder if you could just a small explanation of that would be grateful. Thank you.
Paul, would you like to come back, please?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Yeah, thank you, Mrs. Lawton. It's one of the aims of the partnerships programme is to provide better warning of groundwater flood risk. So at the moment, as we all know, groundwater levels are exceedingly high. There's quite a wide range of impacts, be it from groundwater infiltration to sewers and septic tanks, for example, flooding to houses from underneath, impacts on the highway, quite broad-ranging impacts. And one of the aims will be to give better, more advanced warning of changes to groundwater levels, for example, and so that people can be better prepared for the impacts of elevated groundwater levels if we're not able to actually control those levels, which in itself could be quite ambitious. But it's about awareness raising more than anything, and that enables people to take appropriate action.
Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. I'm quite quite happy with the report, thank you. I'm really pleased that we're looking at as a Greater Lincolnshire Partnership venture, because to be quite candid about it, it's the whole county affects. So with this report, we were asked to note the report and progress on the development and submission of the expression of interest. And in the event of a successful expression of interest, which I ideally hope we do have, support the further development of the resilience innovation programme for the whole, well, Greater Lincolnshire, really. I tend to think of traditional Lincolnshire, maybe it's an age thing. So basically, as we're asked to note on this, basically it's the same as before. If there's any dissent, can we put that in the chat? But basically, I move that we receive the report and note the progress made on the development and submission of the expression of interest, and support further development of the resilience innovation programme for Greater Lincolnshire if we are successful. So do we have any dissent?
None indicated, Chairman.
Well, it sounds like a real good idea to just crack on and get it done then. Thank you very much. Moving on to item 7. We have December surface water flooding improvements to local incident response. And that report is going to be covered by David.
Thank you, Chairman. Can you hear me okay?
Certainly can, sir.
Right, lovely. Thank you. Yeah, I will. I'll take the paper as read, Chairman, but I will just summarise some of the key points within it, if I may. So in the immediate run-up to Christmas, we suffered some localised high-impact flooding, particularly in South Stephen and in South Holland. While the event was not strategically large enough to trigger the standard multi-agency response arrangements, it did trigger a local response and was handled within the resources that were available under those circumstances. What the event did indicate was a number of things. Firstly, is that there was certainly room for improvement in the way we prepare for flooding incidents that go beyond the forecast. So this event, for example, a localised event ordinarily would be handled using resources available through standard service delivery. In this case, the forecast indicated a much lower likelihood of significant impact than actually happened in the event. So we have put in place stronger arrangements to prepare in advance of these kinds of events, and to gear up the flood cell arrangements between partners within the structures of the Lincolnshire Resilience Forum, of which the County Council, District Councils and other organisations are a part. The second thing it also revealed was something of a mismatch in terms of perception and in terms of expectation between some partners with regard to resource that might be available in a non-multi-agency arrangement. So again, that's one of the reasons we wanted to beef up our approach. But also, we're working with our partners in the districts and through the Lincolnshire Resilience Forum to redefine, clarify, and improve the response documentation, so that roles, responsibilities are made clearer, and so that all parties can be aware of what can be expected in the event of such an event. It was, in some ways, it was a frustrating one, because the multi-agency arrangements, when we have a large-scale event across the county, are very well practiced and very well rehearsed. So, you know, we have used them fairly recently in preparation for when we believed there was large-scale flooding coming in January. In the event that didn't happen, but it did allow us at least to retest, rehearse, and refine the arrangements we have between our partners. As I said, very smaller scale impacts are usually easily handleable within existing localized resources. But what we do seem to be having is more of these sorts of events, which are very heavy impact in the immediate locality, which are very difficult to forecast. So we are needing, therefore, to gear up in a more precautionary way than might have been the case when these arrangements were first established 10 years ago. A final element of this, which Councillor Reid has already referred to, is the county council is reviewing its provision of temporary protective measures, namely sandbags, and how we can increase provision of those to local residents, and how we can increase availability of them. As you'll be aware, as members will be aware, exactly the same actually as with district councils, the county council has a discretionary power to provide sandbags. It's not a statutory one, so it doesn't have to. And this is the same with districts. So again, this was one area where we really wanted to improve the clarity of respective roles and responsibilities between partner organisations. But also the county does wish to improve and enhance its capacity in this area, both in terms of the quantity of materials available and also in terms of capacity to move it, to get it on site where it's needed at the same time. A final part of this, and again this refers I think to the new technologies that Councillor Reid was mentioning earlier, is that there are a lot of new products, new technologies available on the market now, which are alternatives or more modern alternatives to sandbags, which homeowners can access and can stock up on themselves in advance. These include things like what I believe they're called water bags, which essentially is stored I'm trying to think of the term. They basically pack very flat. They fold up into a small space, but then when they're put in place, they absorb the water, take it in, and expand. So these are things that can be used by homeowners, put in place very quickly. They're lighter than sandbags. They leave an awful lot less mess. So while there is a strong public expectation around provision of sandbags, one of the things that we do want to look to do is increase promotion through the Lincolnshire Resilience Forum, increase awareness of these alternative methods that homeowners can use to increase the resilience of their own properties as well. I think that's probably all I was going to say on the report, Chairman. So I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you for that. I'll just point a notice on the sandbags. Once they're used, they're actually a problem to the environment because they have to be disposed of properly. So, you know, there is a very good reason to look at other products. Robert, do we have any questions?
Firstly, we have Councillor Ian Fleetwood.
Ian.
Thank you. Yes, it seems to be my day, this one, and I'm sure David's wondering what's going to come next. Yes, we'll go back to the December flooding, and Lincolnshire is quite an undulating county, certainly in West Lindsey, and I know this report focuses further south of West Lindsey, but in West Lindsey through December we had an awful lot of water collecting on scarps, running off fields down the scarps, with the clay-based land in West Lindsey, which is typically boulder clay. Once it's saturated, the water doesn't go into the ground, so it creates flash water flood-offs. And we had a classic example of that in a village I represent called High Apley, where a greenhouse and a property went underwater in December. So that's all well and good. The resident was saying to me, "Can you get me some sandbags?" well, the call to go to is the district council or the now suggested county council, which is great. So now we have the indecision, and they are not a mandatory function. So the resident would then therefore be saying, well, why haven't the sandbags turned up? And well, you have to turn around to them and say, well, the council didn't think it was appropriate. And finally, just picking on David's comments with regard to these flattened bags, they're actually a form of gel bag. And they, as soon as they get damp, they expand and fill up, and they are a whole lot better than sandbags. The only problem is the cost of them. When you start looking at a resident having to buy, I don't know, so let's say 70 sandbags, and they're £4 or £5 each. If someone's on a limited income, it then becomes a real problem. So I don't know if the county council can go some way towards providing a grant scheme for properties that do tend to flood, particularly flash flood from highways. Any comments, David?
Well, thank you very much indeed for that, Ian. Much appreciated as always.
Anytime, you know you're my best friend.
I think that there are a number of issues to unpack in there, actually. I mean, it is a very interesting area. The question of affordability is a difficult one. I think with sandbags, the great attraction of sandbags is they are cheap. There's no doubting it. They are pretty cheap. The problem is once they've been exposed to floodwater, they are usually pretty contaminated, so they have to be landfilled in specially resourced landfills. So they can't even just be sent to a standard landfill. So I mean, typically in the aftermath of a flood, the Environment Agency will test residual sort of sand and materials left over, and if significantly contaminated, they would have to go to specialised landfill. In terms of the cost of cost to individual householders, that's probably not an issue I can resolve today, Ian. And I think that there certainly are issues here to consider in the broader term. It is not a straightforward one. However, I think we would hope that the new arrangements around sandbags would mean that properties where there was a significant likelihood of them flooding would be immediately covered. But I think, again, if some of these materials in sort of the new technologies we're talking about are potentially reusable, then there is an element there of investment for the future. I think, obviously, dependent on the amount that would be needed, that may be something that could be looked at in the future. But at the moment, we're focusing on the sort of the emergency response, the emergency contingency that the county is able to offer in terms of a stock of sandbags, and then helping or supporting residents to think about how they might become more resilient themselves in the longer term. Does that answer your question?
Well, the other comment worth making is that once a gel bag has got wet and it's been used once, it is in effect useless beyond that one operation. So it becomes something whereby it needs to go elsewhere. Right. Probably a more appropriate way to go is, rather than sandbagging properties, is to get clamps for air bricks, is to get door gates, is to get, I don't know, scribble down plates onto loose so the water can't come back up, so that you can at least keep water out of properties and try and promote that. My problem with sandbagging is it going to be a function of district or county council? That is not clear. And similarly, because it's not mandatory, it's discretionary, that is also not clear. So when people have got their wellies full, they are very concerned about who might provide them some help. They are in a point of distress at that point.
Understood, Ian. Well, if I can clarify that, the county council will be putting forward a clear policy on provision of sandbags, which will clarify publicly those points. The district councils do have their own approaches, which they put on their own, which they have on their own websites as well. So they may also be in a position to help, but we will certainly be we will be absolutely clarifying in public provision available from the county council, circumstances under which it will be available, and ways in which that resource can be accessed.
Thank you. Do we have any other speakers, Robert?
Chairman, myself, as indicated next, and then there is 3 other speakers to follow.
Please go ahead, sir.
Thank you very much indeed. I'd like to firstly thank Councillor Ian Fleetwood for how eloquently he put the predicament that I actually was in with Galoshes and Wellingtons on the 23rd. And I welcome David's response. I sincerely do. However, I do challenge the way that it was handled, because the multi-agency trigger wasn't activated, and a coordination in the event was I still haven't got a coordination of events, what you actually do for residents or help residents do when these climate change frequency of events continue to happen. Before going through the report, I think one of the other things that has really come out of this issue for me, and I'm sure for many other councillors, is where Fix My Street is concerned, particularly with the gullies that are silted up, and a response that we get back to say that they will be cleaned out by their annual maintenance programme. It just simply isn't good enough, and I've put forward that to the Highway Scrutiny Chairman for his coming meeting as well. But I would really appreciate some further help from our officers on this one. I take on board where we are with sandbags, that it's discretionary. All I can do, I suppose, is thank most sincerely South Gustavon for having some in stock to help us, and indeed they have now doubled their stock. I noticed that Councillor Lawton has also asked to speak later. She had a care home, I understand, with the same predicaments as I had many residents. Going through the report itself, one of the biggest mysteries, one of the things that really sort of makes me as a councillor feel still helpless is Flood Online. Is, you know, you report what the situation is there, but because the multi-agency wasn't activated, there really wasn't a great deal of coordination, and I am being quite polite there. It does say that there were 12 inquiries requiring response, of which 3 were actually dealt with. What I wish to listen to, and I sincerely hope I might be learning today, is when the programme of a better coordination to help our residents when these sad situations occur. They are absolutely horrendous. They often come with little warning, and we need to be better prepared, Chairman, for the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Would you like to come back on that, David?
I believe the points are covered in the report, Chairman. As I've said, the arrangements that I referred to already to improve coordination have been put in place already. I don't believe there's a lot more really to be said.
Thank you for that. Next speaker, please, Robert.
It is Councillor Bill Aaron.
Bill, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, it revolves around the flood alleviation scheme for Horncastle, which has been brilliant and has saved an awful lot of properties from flooding. But the one thing from a lay point of view I can't quite understand is that I believe that it's only working at 25% capacity, therefore the rivers are coming through the town nearly overtopping. Would it not be better to hold back more and let it out over a longer, slower period? Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for that, Councillor. I am going to
Morgan's raised his hand.
I'm going to defer to my colleague Morgan. That is an Environment Agency asset. I'm sure Morgan can speak with more authority on that than I can. Morgan?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, well, it's a general point about all flood storage areas, and Horncastle is a good example of that. The idea around the flood storage areas is that they are there to basically take the peak off the water as it goes downstream. We want to keep as much of the flood storage areas free and available for storing water as possible. So we will always run the water courses at their maximum capacity downstream, so that there's always the maximum amount of water available should we get even more rainfall or higher flows to come. They're designed to operate just at the point where downstream flooding would you'd see the onset of downstream flooding to keep that capacity as readily available as possible. And it's the same for the sort of the Lincoln washlands, Louth and Horncastle reservoirs, and most flood storage reservoirs operate in that way. Thank you.
Thank you. I did say it was from a lay point of view.
Thank you, Bill. You've got a professional point of view as well there. Is there any other questions, Robert?
Yes, we've got two further people wishing to speak. Oh, well, now three. So the next one is District Councillor Helen Crawford.
Helen, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Robert actually asked quite a few questions that I was going to. But again, I don't think providing just or homeowners having these water bags would suffice when you have your water flooding over your wellies, and in the end, in fact, in Bourne, we needed these huge pumps that the fire brigade provided. It doesn't help, like when you phone Fix My Street, that drains that you can see are absolutely solid and full do not get emptied. All these things, I mean, sandbags aren't expensive. I bought 20 for £10 off of Amazon. I mean, we do need to help and provide and give more understanding and inform the neighbours that where they have flooded, what they can do to help protect themselves. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's a very useful point there. Within the district councils and the parish councils, having that plan to support our people in our wards is a very well made point. David, did you want to say anything?
Thank you, Chairman. I think I'd just underline the point that this is about all organisations working together in the context of response. I mean, we all have elements to contribute. I think the key point is that we maintain that joint work.
Thank you, David. Just hope it never gets as bad as I have to use my whitewater rescue skills. Any more speakers, Robert?
Two further ones. Next is Councillor Christine Lawton.
Christine, please.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Couldn't agree more with the David's view on working together. So many of the residents' problems in my area were down to Anglian water. Water doesn't discriminate. It doesn't matter to whichever organisation where it comes from. It comes and it's horrendous. But I also like to pay tribute. We did suffer in South Holland over the Christmas period to the staff and some councillors indeed who worked tirelessly over Christmas Eve and Christmas Day. They had a miserable Christmas, some of them, but they worked their socks off. They really did, and credit to them. And we can all, if we don't learn from this, we learn nothing. But I think we will learn, and I think working together is one of the only answers. But keeping our residents informed and raising awareness. But improved response, obviously, recognise each person, each organisation's responsibilities, but also the really important thing is now we must adopt the precautionary principle. It's no good if we don't learn from this. Climate change is the great leveller, but if we don't take the precautionary principle, sometimes we will have overreacted, but better that than underreact as we have done sometimes. But welcome this report and thanks very much to all involved.
Thank you. Any more speakers, Robert?
The last one indicating at the moment, Chairman, is Councillor Alison Austin.
Alison, please.
Thank you. I hadn't intended to say anything on this one, but something crossed my mind. Are we adequately resourced as a county council? I was told, not sort of publicly, but that there was only one, whatever you call, lorry, to serve Boston, Pothole and Thirlby. Is that adequate? Or perhaps that isn't the real case. Thank you.
David, did you catch that?
I did, thank you. Yes, the line isn't great sometimes. As an officer, I would always say that we need more resource. Obviously, I think we do seem to be seeing more flooding events. This is, I mean, I can't absolutely prove that scientifically, but my gut feeling is that we are seeing more of these events happening. And I think to that extent, how much resource is enough? It's actually a really difficult question to answer. I mean, certainly one of the things we will be doing as part of developing our approach to temporary resilience measures, we'll be looking at the logistics side of it to make sure that deployment, allocation of resource can be moved to where it needs to be. But I think I'd come back to the rhetorical question: how much is ever going to be enough?
That is very difficult to do without some sort of resource planning. I quite agree. But I will just, before I bring Tom Ashton in, I will make a point that since December, all of our people in this partnership, the IDBs, Anglian Water, and the EA, have all been working really hard. They've all been on a state of constant alert, more or less, all the way through this. And my thanks goes to them supporting our communities during this time. Tom.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I mean, this is less a question rather than my own thoughts and comments. And certainly picking up on the comment of colleagues about the frequency or the apparent frequencies of these events. And I think it would be really, really useful to compare, for example, the last 3 or 4 years to a longer period, perhaps the last 20 or 30 years. Because certainly to my mind, these events do, and from the discussions that I have on drainage boards, from the experience we all have of watching the news, these events do at least appear to be happening with a considerably greater frequency than they used to do. I seem to remember, you go back beyond this current period, I sort of remember 2007, which was obviously the event which engendered the whole partnership network that we enjoy to this day in Lincolnshire. But that's a standout event, whereas now we seem to be having standout events on an annual basis. I remember that very recently having had all of the presentations at a Black Sluice Drainage Board meeting, which felt very much like deja vu of a year previous. The other thing that I seem to be observing on the events that we're experiencing now is the sheer volume of sediment that seems to be coming through the water system. The drains after the events this time round, the same about a year ago, are brown with mud in a way that I could be completely wrong on this, but I don't feel that they used to be, and whether this is an impact on changes in farming practice, and also what impact, if this is a change, what impact that's then going to have on maintenance and desilting regimes going forward. I don't imagine these are things that ourselves as one lead local flood authority can change, but whether our experiences are shared with other organisations around the country, and whether there is anything that collectively can be done to pick up on these points. Thank you.
David.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Ashton. Yeah, I mean, we can certainly take that away and look at it in some more detail. I mean, the work we're doing in the steeping with Lindsay Marsh IDB and the Environment Agency and East Lindsey District Council gives us an opportunity to examine some of those issues in some considerable detail, and we can apply that learning more broadly. But no, thank you for those points, and I'll take those away with me. Thank you. Any further speakers, Robert?
No, there isn't, Chairman, but just before you sum up, if I may beg your indulgence to actually say thank you and endorse what you've already said. The drainage boards, I have got obviously several issues in my area, and they have supported me. I might have to have asked twice sometimes, but they have supported me 100%, and I can't thank them enough. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you for that, Robert. Yeah, I will just say that all of these people have been on a state of constant readiness for some time. And it's really quite hard with the background of the pandemic and other bits and pieces. A big heartfelt thanks from that.
And work 7 days a week, every week, Chairman, since Christmas as well.
Yes. So we're asked to note this report, and basically I'm going to move it, receive and support the recommendations, address the lessons learnt from the events. If we don't have any dissent, it's taken. No, we're okay. It's taken as noted. Then we move on to item 8, which is the investigations under Section 19 of the Flood and Water Management Act of 2010, and we are to receive a report from Paul Brooks. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, this particular report is just an update on the current situation with regard to Section 19 flood investigations, as you said in your introduction. It does talk at some length about the conditions in mainly the south of the county towards the end of last year, and really it's just quite starkly illustrates the situation that has already been discussed at some length this morning. And really, I think it helps to put things into context. There's not really much I want to add to what's discussed in the paper, other than, as can be seen from the graph on page 49, which illustrates the number of Section 19 investigations that we started each year. Compared with last year, compared with 2019, last year was relatively quiet, but even so, it was still significantly above the average, an average year. So it's been a really busy last couple of years, and that's reflected in the length of time it's taking to conclude investigations. I'm pleased to say that investigation reports are coming through increasingly quickly over the last few weeks, and that will soon be reflected in the updates that we are showing online and which get shared with members in preparation for this committee. But I'm still very conscious about the length of time it's taking for some of these investigations to be completed, and that is, as we've said before, some of that is because they're complex investigations. Some of it is because a sheer volume of work and is stretching resources. In recognition of that, I have taken the step of reviewing how we carry out some investigations. In that, I'm advocating we take a more proportionate approach to certain investigations where, for example, the cause is clear or there are minor consequences. So we're not ignoring any flood event, no matter how significant it is. We're still investigating it as we're required to do and as we're expected to do. We're still producing recommendations for managing the flood risk in future, but by taking a lighter approach, I'm hoping that we can make quicker progress on the backlog of investigations. And if I may touch on as well, if time permits, Chairman, just the recent change to how we provide the information online. Members, I think, will have. I hope that members have had a chance to have a look at the new presentation on the County Council website. I hope you would agree it's much improved over the PDFs of the PDF versions of spreadsheets that we've produced over the last few years, which have become increasingly unworkable, I would say, because the amount of information that's on there is just overwhelming. So we're looking at ways of providing that information in a better way that's more accessible and clearer as well, so people get a better idea of what's going on. So thank you, Chairman. Happy to pick up on any other points or answer any questions.
Thank you, Paul, for that. I quite welcome the ability to be able to interrogate a live report rather than a dead one. I also really appreciate the amount of work that's gone into this, and also if we're getting a little bit smarter how we knock things down, quite welcome that as well. It is quite hard to do to collate all these events, plus the fact we have the complexity of working with other partners all the time and getting everybody's work programs to coexist at the same time to achieve a solution for the individuals is really quite hard, but we are really good at it. Robert, do we have any questions, please?
We do, Chairman. We have Councillor Bill Aaron firstly.
Thank you. Bill, would you like to come to the screen? Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, on that, I was going to ask Paul if some very aged reports for Horncastle, 9 years they've been on the list, and I can't see the benefits. So I'm wondering whether those are the sort of reports that probably need winding up to get them off the list. I had a quick look at the new reporting system and thought that very good. And then just the one other thing on the S19s is those recent ones would be good if they could be chivied along so that we can discuss them with the homeowner where appropriate. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bill. Would you like to come back, Paul?
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Councillor Aaron. Yeah, it's part of the management of getting these Section 19 flood investigations completed as soon as possible is regular meetings with the team that are carrying out those investigations. So please be assured that we are doing what we can to get things completed as soon as possible, and that includes, as I touched on earlier, reviewing how we actually carry out the investigations in certain circumstances. So I'm confident that very soon we'll be able to show a significant improvement in the number of investigations, the older investigations which you referred to, being completed and taken off the list, so to speak. And as we move forward, get more timely investigations completed, or investigations completed in a more timely manner, I should say.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions, Rob?
We have 3 coming up, Chairman. Myself, firstly.
Please continue.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you very much indeed. It's received, I'm sure, most heartily by all of us, Paul, that not one investigation is missed. Now, I do note, and I'm sure everybody else notes, just how many more cases there are this year round. And in particular, that each case is individual very often, other than sometimes soil types, in its complexities. So I'd just like to support the work that is ongoing and is done, and say thank you very much on behalf of all those investigations you make. Riparian rights is always a difficult subject very often, if that's the cause. And sometimes they need a very lengthy enforcement action to actually get some resolve. Our next speaker, Chairman, is Councillor Alison Austin.
Alison, please come to the screen.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm afraid I'm not going to let this one drop, sorry. Do you think now that possibly we might be eventually ticking off Station Road in Curtin, Paul? We could now look back at the sewage in this road on King Street in Curtin. I see the last time that it actually was classified as internal flooding was 2019, but this is in the middle of Curtin, which is essential. I mean, it's classed as a village, but to be honest, it's bigger than many towns. And it is on the route between the primary school and Middlecote, the secondary school, on the edge, you know, just on the fringe of the large not industrial estate, sorry, that's the housing estate, the Edinburgh Drive, etc. estate. And really, we should not be having sewage in the streets anywhere. But when it is in a situation like this, with vulnerable populations, I think it's time that somebody, and if it has to be Anglian Water, pull their finger out, it would be desirable. Please, could something be, you know, it may not seem big, it's not lots and lots of properties, but they are probably 1920s, the ones where it happens to. And it really is time, I think, that something was done, please. It's, you know, it does need attention. And I'm sorry if I'm putting the blame on Anglian Water, but between Anglian Water and Highways and ourselves as the Flood Authority, something has to be done. Thank you.
I think a gentleman has indicated that works for Anglian Water. If you'd like to come to the screen, please. Jonathan.
Morning, Chairman. Yeah, I'll ought to just comment on that. So I'll absolutely take that point. I don't know, I'm not specifically aware of the details of Curtin myself, but I know that my operational colleagues certainly are. So let me take that one away, Councillor Austin, and I will dig your email address out and provide you with an update in due course, if that's okay.
Thank you very much for that, Jonathan.
Thank you.
I'm sure Alison will welcome the commitment. Thank you. Any further questions?
Last indication is Councillor Andrew Haig.
Andrew, please.
Thanks, Chairman. It's not a question, it's more of an observation that the numbers of these Section 19s just seems to get larger and larger, and the time period from the first report is getting longer. And quite frankly, I just find that unacceptable. And I really think that if we don't do something soon, if we have a continued heavy rainfalls, we're just going to get a list that never gets resolved. Thank you.
Thank you for the encouragement there, Andrew. Paul, would you like to say anything?
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Councillor Higgs. Yeah, quite conscious that there is what you could call a backlog of Section 19 investigations at the moment. We're doing our best to address those. We have no choice but to investigate when we become aware of a flood. But because it's weather dependent, it's very difficult to plan ahead, of course, and ensure you have sufficient resource. I'm not saying that we're not able to undertake the investigations, but unfortunately, resource is finite, and so in those situations, it can take longer than normal to complete those investigations. But as I said earlier, please be assured that investigations are being undertaken. I'm seeing investigation reports coming through just about every day now, and I'm sure that in pretty short time we'll get the list down, the outstanding list down to something a bit more manageable, and where we can see a bit of light at the end of the tunnel.
Thank you for the reassurance there, Paul. Happy with that, Andrew?
As I say, my moan or my concern wasn't about any individuals not doing the job properly. I'm just concerned that the list seems to be getting longer every time we see it, and the timescales are really, if not acceptable, really. And as I say, I'm not blaming any organisational person, just saying that it really needs to be looked at and the concerns addressing.
Thank you, Andrew. Yeah, I think we've got a better staff team now. With the partnership, I know is working. All of the partners that are present here and the IDBs are working constantly to improve things. It is just a question of working at it and making some sense of, like, some of the items that should have been archived off quite a few years ago, while then enabling us to look at the new stuff while not having to revisit anything. I think that's where we are with it. Any more questions, Robert?
Yes, we have Councillor Ian Fleetwood.
I noticed him at the top there. I thought, that's ominous. Ian, please.
Well, I only turn the video on when you want to see me or not. Yes, I have some sympathy for the officers, believe it or not, on this one, in that, yes, we have situations where problems come forward and they do take some reporting and investigating. However, because of the length of time of some of them, and I'll quote a reference of a village called Langworth, just east of Lincoln on the A158, where there was a flooding issue, which seemed to have a problem with the Anglian water sewage system 4 or 5 years plus ago. Anglian Water put into place a new storage treatment facility, which supposedly resolved the problem. However, because it's been on the books for so long under Section 19 reporting, over Christmas we seem to have water coming back up through the sewage system again, and the entire village has lost its ability to work. If I remember rightly, we had a flood and drainage meeting way over in, I think it was Skegness, a couple of years ago, where I bumped into a Mr. Love of the Anglian Water, and he said he was going to meet the people and hopefully get things resolved. But here we are, Christmas time, I'm still getting phone calls from people not able to use sewage systems. So some sympathy for the officers, but the other side of the deal, we do need to get some solutions and some long-term solutions.
Thank you, Ian. I think Jonathan wants to come in on that.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll pick up with Simon. He gives his apologies today, Chairman. He's had to meet another councillor in Buckinghamshire because of the flooding at Christmas this morning. But I'll certainly pick up that Langworth issue, and I'll touch on some of the wider issues in a minute when I just present through a few slides. Langworth is certainly not the only location where we have had problems this winter, and I will explain why shortly.
Thank you for that, Jonathan. Appreciated. Do we have any other speakers, Robert?
None indicated, Chairman.
Right then. Members of the committee are invited to review and comment, which we have on the Section 19 at Flood and Water Management Act 2010. Same as before, we just asked to note it. So I move that the report and note the progress of the investigations underway. And basically, does anybody dissent to the report? Everybody happy? Well,
nobody indicated, Chairman.
Thank you for that. Then it is agreed. And then we're on to item 9, and the report is the Environment Agency update. And I welcome Morgan Ray here to present it. Thank you very much.
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, everybody. Thank you very much. I've got the update report, which I'll go through or give a summary of. Then I'll pause for some questions for that, and then I've got a short presentation about just continued, I suppose, the discussion about the recent flooding or high water events across Lincolnshire. So by way of update, our main priority has been continuing to deliver the £100 million grant and aid that we've received this year over the course of the year, which has included both the recovery programme and our capital programme. As far as the recovery programme is concerned, we're progressing really well with that. So as a reminder, that's around about £30 million programme made up of over 130 individual schemes, and I think it's worth reflecting on this. You know, there's been a huge team effort from a standing start from when the money was announced. I think in around the March budget to get this programme on the ground and delivering. It's involved our contractors, consultants, and as well as good use of the public sector cooperation agreement. So that means we've included in the internal drainage boards, Lindy Marsh, Black Sluice and Witham Forth, for example, to help deliver that programme as well. So it's been a real team effort. As at the end of the year, we were 51% of the sites were completed, 20% were in construction and 29% were in the design or scope phase. In reality, we're now much further ahead than that. So looking to have, we will go slightly into the next year in its financial year, but it's been a really good effort with around about 10 projects underway at any one time. So specific updates on different specific sites. Black Sluice Complex is now, to all intents and purposes, complete, both phases 1 and 2. We believe that worked quite well over the high rainfall period that we saw in January and December. There were still high levels in the South 40 foot. We were grateful for the cooperation and continued sort of team working with Black Sluice IDB to manage those water levels. But the system worked well as a whole with the gravity gates and the lock there, continuing to function properly. Now on the Barlings, that work was completed in January. Now, Councillor Fleetwood mentioned some sandbagging in that area. With the works having been just completed, we did go back and put some textile over the completed area because it's probably at its weakest where grass hasn't taken, and we put some membrane down should the water come over the bank, that it wouldn't wash it away where it's just been completed, and that is possibly where some of the sandbagging was done. There was also some sandbagging done on other low spots, both in the sort of the Barlings area and throughout the Lower Witham systems, where we've got recognised low spots. But that possibly the area of the Barlings that Councillor Fleetwood was talking about. Boston Barrier is good news. There is that we're now able to claim nearly 14,000 properties against our national 300,000 target for reducing the risk of flooding to people's homes. And this is being brought about because the gate is now functional and it works, and it can operate to prevent the ingress of tidal water. There's still some residual works to be completed. The overall project won't be complete until 2022. There are some downstream flood wall works to be completed, and obviously the site needs to be needs in itself, but works that don't necessarily affect the function of the gate. So obviously the control rooms and the landscaping and the finishing off works will take some time to complete. The East Coast work has obviously was a success last year, and plans are in place to carry on with that work over the following year. We're working closely with the government to look at how, obviously because that's been carried out by Dutch contractors with restrictions on international travel at the moment, how that can be facilitated going forward. But we're hopeful that that can be completed similar to last year with special measures put in place. We were able to recycle over 64,000 metres cubed of sand to protect the hard sea defences. And we're also carrying out work this year to look at the residual life of the hard defences, which will feed into the Saltfleet to Gibraltar Point strategy. That work's ongoing at the moment. With regard to the Saltfleet to Gibraltar Point strategy, that work's underway. As we mentioned before, we've now got the go-ahead to develop a full business case for a major project to the value of £450 million. So that is going to be a big piece of work for us to undertake over the next few years, and we're sort of developing the team to be able to complete that at the moment. The Boston Haven banks, I know it's a subject close to your heart. So the latest update on that is that we're 96% complete with that. There are some minor works to finish off when the weather gets a bit better in the spring. It's a bit difficult to get on to the remaining elements of bank there at the moment, but we will be completing that in April, May time. But it's just a sort of a final bit of topping up in one or two locations where the level's already quite high. So there's minimal risk from that, but there's just a minor bit to be done there. The steeping catchment has been mentioned already this morning. Just a reminder that we produced the catchment action plan in 4 main themes there. So improving the flow through the system, making the community more resilient, making sort of local infrastructure more resilient, strengthening and maintaining defences, and looking at floodwater storage, including natural flood management. So the dredging work through the suction dredger has been had progressed well last year. As with normal with a lot of these operations, we've actually found an additional amount of silt that hadn't appeared on the original survey. So I think on the paper there we've shown an additional section in purple there, which we've been completing. There's still a little bit of work to do on that, which has been complicated slightly by the current restrictions on travel and the current infection rates of coronavirus in the country, which has meant the Dutch contractors working on behalf of Lindsay Marsh Drainage Board have not been able to return after Christmas, but we're hopeful that they again will be able to come back soon to finish that work off. There is further work to be done later this year as well on the Wainfleet Relief Channel. But to date, something like 47,600 cubic metres silt has been removed from the Steeping River. I'm not quite sure what that is in Olympic-sized swimming pools, but I'm sure we can have that for another time. On the resilience theme, we're commencing a project this year to look at the flood warning area, and in fact, so that's some more modelling work to see what improvements can be made as far as the flood warning is concerned. But we have issued a number of flood alerts in December and January this year. And I think it's probably worth reflecting on people that flood alerts are our lowest level of warning. I know it's caused a bit of concern amongst the community and the communities, to be honest, where we do get flood alerts. So it is our lowest level of warning. It's where we're not expecting people's homes to be flooded, but we do expect low-lying land, perhaps driveways, gardens and roads to have the potential for flooding there. The next level on is where we expect people to perhaps think about being prepared, think about what actions they might take should they receive a flood warning. So it's a bit of a heads up warning, if you like. And a flood warning would be the next level of warning on top of that. The next theme is managing flood risk naturally, or the storage theme. So this is looking at water storage in the catchment. We've employed a experienced consultant who's been working on natural flood risk management measures elsewhere in the county at Swayton and across in Nottinghamshire, who's been identifying potential areas for natural flood risk management. I don't know if anybody saw Country File last night, but there's some good examples there in Northamptonshire on natural flood risk management. So it's looking at those sort of things for the Steeping catchment, sort of higher up in the catchment there. So these things tend to take quite a lot of time to put in place, with landowner agreements, getting the right type of scheme, paying for it. But the first stage is to identify what is likely, what is possible, and what will make an improvement. The final theme is managing our sort of raised defences, and we're doing a lot of work this year. We've been doing a lot of work this year. Some of it connected to our recovery programme to look at the tow protection work on the embankments, so where we've perhaps seen some erosion. So we're looking at maintaining those banks so we can reduce the effects of erosion. And we've been raising some of the low spots in the embankments as well. I'm not on the report, but it's worth noting that the Lincoln Defence improvement programme is also carrying on. We're hoping to commence some of the work on the Foz Dyke in April, which will improve a section of flood wall there. We've been working on the Sinsel Dyke, Stampen Sluice, and in other locations around Lincoln. So it's around about £6 million project, which is continuing and hopefully finishing later on this year. So I'll stop there and take any questions on that element.
Thank you, Morgan. Robert, have you got any questions?
I've got 3 people indicating that they'd like to take part. Councillor Alison Austin would like to comment firstly, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Alison?
Thank you. if people wonder, by the way, why I am so interested in much of this committee's work, my area is bounded by the tidal River Haven, the Sea Marsh, and the South 40-foot. So I am this is incredibly important to me, all of this work that goes on here. Thank you. First of all, in case people don't read the chat, my husband has given his apologies for departing because he has another meeting, and he asks that we thank the EA profusely for the timely completion, despite COVID, on both the Black Sluice, the Gravity Lock, the Gravity Sluice, and the lock. And I would like to now just comment further on that. Usually whenever there's a flood alert relating to Black Sluice, South 40-foot, sorry, I tend to go and either walk part of the path of the so-called Black Sluice Trail, or equally I go and stand by the lock and watch the water coming out into the tidal haven. And it was very, very impressive to see how, when the tide was appropriate, the water was absolutely pouring through that lock. And that is proof, definitely, that what has been done, the gravity sluice, combined with keeping those lock gates open, has really, really helped. And you know, that it, I think, should allay a lot of lay people's fears. The other things that I will just comment briefly on, the Havens Bank scheme I see on my side of the river. I won't take the chairman's thunder on that one, but on my side, it looks considerably raised when I was down at Frampton Marsh, so that's good. The actual barrier works, and I do think it's appropriate that I thank the EA and the contractors for their consideration, because I have residents at the top of Wibbitson Low Road. They are absolutely underneath the work that's been going on. You know, that they're way, way below the bank. It towers above them, but the consideration that they've been given is, I think, outstanding. And we look forward to everything being completed. I'm still hoping one day to actually watch the barrier coming up or down. I believe the next raising is the 16th of March, but I've never yet witnessed it. Anyway, so thank you, EA. It's, I think, perhaps nice that you're getting a positive response for once, isn't it? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alison. I will thank very much for the works on my side of the river as well. So it's been phenomenally wet, and it's really been quite hard to deliver those works, and well done to those that have been working on it. The next speaker looks like
Councillor Fleetwood.
Yeah, it looks very much like Councillor Ian Fleetwood. Ian, please.
Thank you. Just a few comments from Morgan. Obviously, I alluded to sandbagging earlier, and Morgan came back with regard to sandbagging. Yes, I appreciate the Barlings has had the banks reconstituted over recent times following the mega flood from last year. And my concern was the sandbagging in areas other than where the main flood was. Recently, the River Witham has been running virtually at a record level again, bar, I think it was 20 centimetres. So there's been an awful lot of water going down the Witham. And my concern is the resilience of the Barlings O Bank and the resilience of the Witham banks in this area. I'm aware that the Snakeholm drain, which is connected to both of these, was due to have some work completed 2-3 weeks ago, or started 2-3 weeks ago, but because of the rainfall, it was put back. So I'm now looking for some reassurance from Morgan that the entire structure in this area is fit for purpose, and that we don't expect to see any more water overtopping in that vicinity?
Morgan.
Okay, a couple of things there. Sandbagging in other areas. Yeah, we do recognise that there are other low spots in the banks. And where we've got recognised low spots, we'll endeavour to provide sandbags to those as and when we can. As regards to the resilience of the banks as a whole, don't quote me on the exact figures, but I think there's something like about 1,000 miles of raised flood embankments throughout Lincolnshire. They are they're not modern structures. They've been there for some time. We are looking at things like the lower Witham strategy, where we're reviewing those, and we will be doing survey work, site investigation work to better understand the resilience of those banks, and then following on that, what work is potentially needed to make them more resilient. So I can't give an assurance that we will not see further breaches or further overtopping impacts on any of those sort of 1,000 miles of flood banks. However, we do have the investigations in place to try and manage those risks in a lot of locations. Snake Home Drain, I'll have to come back to you with an update, Councillor Fleetwood. I'll check in with the recovery team and get them to either myself or they will drop you a line on that.
Thank you very much, Morgan. Do we have any more speakers, Robert?
We have two indicating. The next one is my surname's sake, Councillor Christopher Reid.
Thank you, Christopher.
Thanks, Chairman. Yeah, it was just a quick one, really, on the bit you'd said in there about the delays and dredging. Have we got any indication yet, sort of when that is expected to sort of go back ahead again? And obviously, I know we might have more answers later today with the Prime Minister's announcements and everything, but if for whatever reason the things that have been causing the delays to this point continue, are there any sort of contingencies in place to manage that situation going forward? And if, for example, there's a part of the river where there's particular issues, is there anything that can be done in the meantime to clear that if someone noticed there's a big build up developing while it's waiting for the dredging?
No, in short, it's not been resolved at the moment. We're still waiting to hear when the contractors can come back and carry on that work. However, they are due to come back later on this year anyway. Regardless of whether they can sort of come back over the next few weeks or not, they are due to come back in later on in the year to complete another large section of the Wainfleet Relief Channel. The dredging work makes up a proportion of the whole plan. So it's as I talked about, the reducing the impact on the raised defences, the natural flood management work upstream, and then sort of the resilience measures. So it all forms part of that jigsaw, if you like. So when we've completed that plan further in the year, it will make up that whole part, as it were. So we can't operate the machinery ourselves, or Lindsay Marshall aren't able to operate the suction dredging machinery. It needs to be done in that way because we've got certain permits to be able to do the work in that way. So unfortunately, at the moment, we just have to wait for the next couple of weeks, I think, until we see if those sort of Dutch contractors can come back soon.
Thank you. Any further? Thanks very much for that, Morgan. All I can say, as Councillor Austin will actually attest to, the flow rates on the South 40 foot since the Royal S'mores work there, it really has made a big difference, and we're looking forward to the steeping have the same benefits. Councillor Aaron, is it?
It is, Chairman.
Bill, welcome to the front.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Yeah, my question follows on from from Councillor Rees. I'm wondering, is there a programme for desilting, especially on the Waring, because that isn't protected by the flood alleviation scheme? And with these heavy downpours, we seem to be getting more and more silt being deposited through the channel within the town. Thank you.
What I would say about desilting, that is with the steeping, it was very much evidence based, and it came on the back of some modelling work, and it also showed that the dredging or the desilting is not something that will work by itself. We will always need the raised defences. No matter how much dredging you do, you will always need to try and attenuate the flows upstream, and you always need to manage the resilience of the community if and when flood water does come over. Flood defences at some point in the future. So that's how the steeping action plan was formed. With other watercourses, there are other plans afoot. I'm not aware that we have any additional plans to carry out any desilting work on the Waring or any other watercourses at the moment. But obviously that could form part of a future action plan if it was needed.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions?
None indicated.
Right then. Thank you very much for that, Morgan.
So I think Rachel, hopefully, will be able to share a brief presentation put together.
Thank you. I guess that was coming next.
It's just loading.
Thank you.
That should be on the screen now.
It's just whirring away, so hopefully it'll be there in a second. Here we go. So great, thank you. So it's just a very brief overview of the December and January flooding. Am I able to move it on, or will you do that? Okay, so this shows our rainfall radar trace for the 23rd and 24th December rainfall. It's a bit difficult to make out, but in the top right-hand corner, it's probably the north coast of Norfolk, and then you can just sort of see the wash just a little bit further in from that. So the heaviest rain at that time fell on the south of the county and across the rest of our sort of Northamptonshire patch. If you move on again. So the key focus for us as sort of Lincolnshire and Northamptonshire area was across Northamptonshire, Peterborough, and the River Glens in Lincolnshire and Spalding. What we found was that what started off as a surface water incident sort of merged into a river flooding incident during the course of those few days. In the Lower Nene, we saw something like about 250% of the long-term December average, so a significant amount of rainfall. And as I think David Hickman alluded to earlier, a lot more than was originally forecast. Multiple gauging stations recorded their highest ever totals. Unfortunately, it did result in some flooded properties in Surfleet. And further south in Northamptonshire, we were quite heavily involved with the evacuation and emergency response around the evacuation of the Billing Aquadome caravan park. And I think, again, if you saw Country File last night, you'll have seen some of the impacts of that I would recommend actually to the committee, if you've not seen it, to sort of track down Country File last night, which we did show, which is based on the Nene Valley, which was really interesting. This is an example. This is River Glen, and it shows how it was the highest recorded level there. So the black line is the previously highest level recorded, and we saw it go over that by some distance there. We've got some information from Welland and Deeping Internal Drainage Board. It was the wettest December recorded at Podhole Pumping Station since 1868, where they recorded 127 millimetres of rainfall. That's the contrast actually with May 2020, which is the driest May at Podhole Pumping Station since 1836. So we are seeing these vast variations in I suppose climate reaction at the moment. So very, very dry spells and very, very wet spells, which does make flood risk management and water management in general ever more complex. Certainly that sort of fluctuation does put extra pressure on flood risk assets, and obviously puts pressure on water resources assets as well. Due to this probably nearly 50 millimetres of rain received on the 23rd December, they ran their diesel pumps 24 hours a day until the 30th of December. So January, as I think the chair alluded to earlier, was a very, very busy time for us. Thankfully, we didn't see too many impacts from the flooding, but it didn't mean that us and our partner organisations, IDBs and Lincolnshire County Council, weren't very busy. We saw multiple flood alerts and flood warnings issued across the patch. We had good response, multi-agency response with the local resilience forums. We engaged quite closely with MPs, landowners and other commercial enterprises. And again, multiple gauging stations recorded their highest ever totals. We saw the Lower Witham was virtually bank full, as Councillor Fleetwood mentioned. There was still a tiny bit of capacity left in there, but certainly we did see high groundwater and high water levels in the River Slee and in the Billinghayes Skirth, where we did see some overtopping and seepage. We've also used our Lincoln flood storage reservoirs as well over that time. And just to explain this couple of pictures, so that the top left is our extract from our flood guidance statement. I suppose green is more routine, likely to be low impacts. The picture on the right showing all the flood warnings was taken on the same day as the flood guidance statement. So even though there are a few impacts, it just shows how busy the Environment Agency as a whole has been over that period, issuing alerts, monitoring defences. We've got a picture on the bottom left there shows some sandbagging to a low spot of one of the high level defences. Even though there's sort of low impacts from that, some seepage or overtopping water to deal with, probably in local drainage systems, we're still working hard. When the defences are working, so are we and our partner organisations. The picture on the lower right is at Surfleet, where unfortunately we did, as I said, did see some flooding, and I think the fire service assisted with pumping there. Back into Lincoln, shows the Sinsel Dyke next to the football stadium there. We helped out there with some pumping to ensure that the NHS sort of testing site wasn't too badly impacted from that. Did a lot of tweeting, as you can see on that bottom right picture. That's floodwater going through Lincoln there. You can see how high the levels were. I think that's the upstream end of Sinsel Dyke. And not to forget my old patch, the River Trent. So this is some pictures around Torksey. So very, very high levels at Torksey. If you look at the dates at the graph above, that's probably about a week later than the significant rainfall that was achieved. So by the time the rainfall has fallen in Birmingham, Leicestershire, Peak District, it takes a good amount of time to reach this part of Lincolnshire. And in fact, I think we did have a heightened flood guidance statement because of the impacts of the Trent at Torksey and down towards Gainsborough. The picture on the bottom right shows the flood washlands in action there. So these are washlands which are designed to overtop and reduce the pressure further downstream. So the Trent, as it goes through Lincolnshire, is affected by both high tides and floodwater coming down the Trent. If you've got just high tides, it's probably not too much of a problem. If you've just got fluvial water, it's probably not too much of a problem. But if you've got a slight combination of the both, that's when we start to see overtopping of those defences, all those minor defences into the washland there. There is, according to my East Midlands colleagues, they're also hoping to commence a scheme at Torksey in March, which will protect the community there and actually also improve resilience against water finding its way into the Fosdyke and finding its way down to Lincoln and the Witham as well from the Trent. So that work's starting in March. I think we're about there. Yeah, that's it. So if there's any questions about the December, January flooding from the Environment Agency perspective, I'd be pleased to take them.
Thank you, Morgan. Robert, do we have any questions?
None indicated, Chairman.
Just give them a couple of minutes. I'm sure we can. Anybody there?
There isn't, Chairman.
Oh, you got off there fairly lightly this time then, Morgan. Thanks for a report. Oh, had you thought of a question, Christine?
Oh, I think you're on mute.
You're on mute, Christine.
No, I beg your pardon. I was just pressing the picture back up. I do beg your pardon.
Oh, that's okay. I thought you was ready and poised, ready to come in there, Christine.
No,
so,
luckily not.
Oh, thanks very much. So the committee is asked to consider and comment.
Chairman.
Yes.
Aaron's wishing to speak. I noticed.
Okay, then please come in.
I think it's gone, Chairman. The metal one.
It must be residual. Okay, so we're asked to consider and comment on the detailed report. So I'm quite happy to move the report as received and note the progress, which has been considerable on the ongoing delivery of the capital programme and recovery. Same as before. Is anybody dissenting from that? Robert?
Nobody indicating, Chairman.
In that case, then, there's no need for a formal vote, and we'll move on to item 10. Jonathan's been waiting very patiently for us, and Jonathan's going to present us with a report from Anglian Water. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I'll just run through some slides if that's all right.
Please do.
It's been a little bit busy, as you'll see shortly, and I haven't had a chance to put anything down on paper for you. So I think Rachel's given me control. So let me see if I can share my screen. Yeah, here we go. See if that works.
Perfect.
Yeah, can you see that?
Yes, certainly can. Thank you.
Yes. So, can you see it full screen, or can you see the notes?
It's full, so it's fine.
Perfect, even better. So, right, let's move on quickly. So I want to spend a bit of time on the sort of fourth slide on here. So I kind of whizzed through the first few. So some of this I will have covered when I spoke last time about the kind of wider role of angling water, but within the context, particularly of the really wet winter that we've had and the flooding around December and actually the kind of continual operational problems that we've had since then, it's just good just to set the scene in terms of on the left on the slide there, you can see our kind of long-term ambitions. These sit within our strategic direction statement, which was republished in 2017. And you'll see the top one there talks about making the east of England resilient to the risks of drought and flooding. So now, just to pick up on a point that David mentioned earlier, you know, there's absolutely no way that we can do that in isolation. We have to do that in collaboration with others. And that's really the whole principle of working with yourselves and other committees and other partners around the region is to help us all pull in the same direction, really. So, and no more as that really becomes really obvious than when you're dealing with a kind of live incident as we are at the minute. So, and we'll see some of that in a minute. As also has been discussed today, the impact that a changing climate is having on our kind of operations is becoming more and more stark, I think. And on the right-hand side of the slide, you'll see some outputs there from our recently published climate change adaptation report. That's available on our website, and yeah, feel free to sort of browse that at your leisure. But as you can imagine, both flooding to our assets, so where our assets are impacted by high floodwaters, rivers overtopping their banks, for example, and flooding from our assets, so where customers are experiencing flooding from our sewer network, for example, both feature really highly within that document, as you would expect. So just to just sort of touch on the current incident that we're in and the challenges that we've had. Some of these figures have been touched on already, and I just jotted down some of the facts that Paul showed earlier for Lincolnshire. You know, the rainfall that we've had in, I think it was December, ranges from 141 to 246% of the long-term average. That was on top of a really pretty wet autumn, particularly in the south of the county, and Morgan's just kind of shown that again, particularly with the weather we had around Christmas time. You know, it's been really exceptional, and that's led to both really high kind of fluvial flows and a lot of the kind of drainage systems, so the watercourses, its networks, etc., are extremely full, and we're already full around Christmas time. But also an area that's kind of having a real impact on us and links to that DEFRA bid that we've submitted is the very high groundwater levels that we're experiencing as well, and that's obviously particularly pertinent in Lincolnshire around the Lincolnshire limestone and the northern chalk up in the northern part of the county. So, and actually, it's probably the southern part of the county where we're seeing most impact, particularly on that that kind of chalk outcrop there. So, and I'll come on to how we're dealing with some of that in a minute. So, but I thought what a pertinent fact there on the slide is the one right at the bottom saying in January we've seen 4 billion litres more of water passing through our system than we did this time last year, and that's really a kind of effect of either the kind of high groundwaters, so we're getting a lot of infiltration into the network, whether that's through our own systems or through private systems that are under the ground, or from water that's finding its way into the sewer system where it's got nowhere else to drain at the moment. And we're seeing this across the whole of the region, and that could be coming in through highway networks, or people lifting manholes, or just kind of seeping through manholes on roads, whatever. Water will always find, I think someone said earlier, it's water is completely non-discriminatory. It will just go wherever it wants to go and always find the lowest point, and often our sewer network is that lowest point. And that's why some of the issues that have been raised earlier about Curtin and Langworth, that's why we start to see some of these impacts, because it is the lowest point in the area, and water will always find its way there. So So this is the slide I just wanted to spend a bit more time on, really because just to kind of highlight the kind of operational response that that we've been dealing with since the 23rd of December. So we've basically been in full instant mode for the last 9 weeks, and we haven't stopped. And there's operational teams out there that didn't have a Christmas and have been going ever since. And you know, it's extremely difficult, obviously, for all of our customers, but you know, for all the teams that are out there as well, trying to manage the sheer amount of water that we've got across the region. So, you know, we've pulled in resource from all over the place. So, you know, we've got 400 technicians, it says there. We've got kind of volunteer shifts coming in from across the business to help out. You know, and we've been manning our instant room 24/7 since the end of December. So, and I'm hopeful that today, maybe tomorrow, we might stand that down. So I've missed the call this morning to find out if we're doing that. So I'll find out later. So and in terms of responding to the sheer amount of water, there's a few different things that we can do to obviously help manage our network. So one, we can use tankers, and the image at the sort of top left of the 4 images there, that's Great Ponton in the snow a couple of weeks ago. That tanker that actually caused a few problems for us because that tanker couldn't get in and out of the pumping station because of the snow. And it just goes to show all the different issues that we're trying to compete with and have been competing with over the last few weeks, trying to obviously maintain service for our customers. And I'm aware of, you know, there's lots of people who've not been able to obviously use their facilities all the time because of the water that we've had. You know, obviously one way of doing that is through tankers, but obviously we can only do that if we can get them there and do that safely. So we've had more tankers on the road during this instant than we've ever had before. So normally during wet weather, we have about 50 or 60 tankers on the road. For this instant, as you see there on the slide, we've had 120 tankers on the road, and we've pulled tankers away from places as far away as Manchester to support the instant that's ongoing at the minute. So, and that in itself has been a huge logistical challenge, as you can probably imagine. So we've also, as you can see there, had about 300,000 separate jobs raised in the period since the end of December. So, you know, our call handlers and the teams, you know, looking after our customers have just been unbelievably busy. You know, that 30,000 is slightly out of date now. That's probably a week or so out of date. But that was about 5 months worth of work in 8 weeks. So it gives you an idea of the amount of work we're getting, and that 30,000 jobs is just on the kind of flooding, water recycling side of the business. That doesn't include all the jobs on the water side of the business that we'd just be dealing with as kind of business as usual as well. So yeah, it's been really extreme. And actually, anyone I speak to who's been in the business for a long time, they said they've never known it like this before. You know, I've had operational people who've been doing this for 30, 40 years, and they've said they've never known it like it. So it's been really exceptional. So. One other way that we can obviously deal with, you know, the particularly the high water levels that we're seeing, you know, getting into and inundating our systems, is through kind of over pumping operations, and you can see a few pictures there on the screen. Now we can only undertake over pumping operations with special permits from the Environment Agency called local enforcement positions, and that's where we can over pump directly from normally from a pumping station or from our network directly out to the environment, only where there's no environmental impact and only where there's that over pumping doesn't cause flood risk downstream. And assuming we meet those criteria and that it's obviously protecting human health and ensuring, you know, people are not going to get flooded and they're able to use their services, then the Environment Agency allow us to over pump. Now, the first place we got that local enforcement position this winter was in Scotwick, which is on the Lincolnshire limestone ridge. And the water that's draining down into our pumping station there is pretty much crystal clear, and it has zero ammonia. So we're doing an ammonia test to test how much kind of foul sewage is in there, and the test is coming back at 0. and normal sewage has a kind of ammonia of around 30 or 40 milligrams per litre. So it gives you an idea of just the sheer amount of kind of sort of fresh water and flood water that's making its way in one way or another into our system to and we're obviously having to try and deal with that. So obviously where we can do that, and obviously we thank the Environment Agency for granting those permits where it's acceptable, then obviously we can do that, and that provides a lot of relief for our customers. And also kind of frees up those tankers to move them elsewhere to go and help other people where we can't overpump and use local enforcement positions. So that's been a huge help, and we will obviously apply for extensions to those LEPs where it's appropriate, and where in particularly the groundwater is continuing to have a really big impact on the network. I'll just whiz through these last few slides then, just to talk about some of what we're doing to try and manage the impacts of this. So our investment in resilience is significant, as you would imagine, and that's really what our when we build our business plan, that's what delivering resilience is all about. And you can see on the slide there, £1.5 billion to be invested in resilience measures over the next 5 years. It's a huge figure that we want to invest in this, and some of that looks like some of those images that you see on the screen there. So that's where we've actually protected our assets from flooding, and some of these things will look familiar to you. They're flood boards, they're flood walls, and things like that help to ensure that our assets can continue to function during wet weather, and where in this case this will be to kind of probably protect from, say, fluvial flooding. Those sorts of things don't help, obviously, in terms of the sort of groundwater in it and sort of inundation that we get. So there's other things that we look to do that, such as kind of relining the sewer network to prevent groundwater infiltration into the network. So yeah, so obviously there's a huge amount of work that we're doing around that, and we'll continue to do as we go forward. The other thing that we've been particularly successful across kind of Lincolnshire with is our approach to partnership funding, and you'll see a couple of images there of some familiar schemes to this committee, of Stampend and Louth, where we've been a contributor to those schemes because we've been a sort of direct beneficiary to that, but also because it's the right thing to do for our customers and the kind of wider sort of population around Greater Lincolnshire. So in the previous kind of AMP period, so that was up until 2020, so between 2015 and 2020, we contributed about £7.5 million towards partnership funded schemes, and that included Stampend, for example. And in the next 5 years, so from 2020 to 2025, we want to try and contribute about £12 million to schemes. And we're currently working with partners across Lincolnshire, in places like Lincoln and Louth and a number of other areas where we're looking to continue to do more work. So, and Matthew's sort of programme of work, I've already passed that on to colleagues to see if there's a way that we can kind of join up with that, and see if there's an opportunity to kind of partnership fund some of that work where there might be benefit, and that might mean that we can all do more together. So, which would be really, really positive. One of the things that's come out really clearly from this event as well is around the kind of roles and responsibilities, and really the only thing I want to say on this slide is just join up with the points that David was making earlier about kind of continuing to work together and try and understand how we can all better respond to this type of event. And the key sort of plea I would make is to just make everyone aware that although the water may have drained away mostly from the surface, this event is very much still a live event, and we're still, experiencing, sort of challenges and inundation of our network. And obviously because of that, the continual kind of partnership working will be absolutely key to make sure that we that we deliver for the communities that we all serve as best as we can. And then my last slide just really sort of sums up about that continual kind of working together. There's lots of things that are ongoing and lots of things that we're doing together in collaboration. And a few things listed there, particularly that DEFRA innovation bid, which I was heavily involved, working with Paul on to pull together some stuff on that. drainage and wastewater management plans, which I think I talked about sort of briefly last time, which will be our kind of long-term planning in this space, and the more help we get from the county and the districts to support those long-term plans and sort of future investment plans, the better. And clearly, for the future, we'll continue to assist with the Section 19s and delivering any actions and recommendations that are highlighted through that, and yes, we'll continue to support the county as much as we can. So Joan, I'll leave it there for now. I haven't seen any questions or requests to speak pop up, but obviously if anybody does have any questions, then please do. Absolutely, I will make I'll share the slides with Rachel, and they can be sent out with the rest of the pack, if that's all right, Chairman. And then there's nothing in there that's not can be shared.
Yeah. Thank you very much for that, Jonathan. That's much appreciated. Robert, do we have any questions?
No, we don't. There was an initial suggestion from Councillor Alison Austin that a presentation could be available to be sent out, but it seems to have disappeared.
Yeah, that's absolutely fine. I'll make that available, and that can be shared with the minutes. Yeah.
And as of the last slide, I very much welcome the additional work into SUDS. Because as I mentioned once before, greenfield rates and what actually happens in soil conditions on fields are two different things. And you can actually argue the fact that if a field is cultivated, it will soak up water a lot better than a greenfield rate. So you go from agricultural to a greenfield rate, you're already going backwards. Depending on the soil type, you're already going backwards, and we really needed to be able to manage to protect the people that live in our wards, basically. But there's no need to pray, Jonathan.
Just praying the rain stops, that's all.
I think that would be quite an adequate one. So we have no questions. I thank you very much for sharing that report and the works that Anglian Water do, which we really will thank you for. I know there's Councillor Adams has had problems over Christmas, and he was panicking. So I'll pass on the thanks from Councillor Adams as well. Thank you very much for the help and support there. So,
Mr. Chairman, if it's all right, I'll drop off now because I need to go and join another call around the ongoing incident, if that's okay.
I'm sorry we've run on a little bit.
No, that's fine.
But no, thank you for coming and thank you for the input.
No, pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So then, therefore, I note the verbal update from Jonathan. Do we have any dissent?
We don't, Chairman.
Well, thank you very much, Jonathan. And thank you all, that's agreed. We move on to the last item, which is our Scrutiny Committee work programme, and this will be introduced by Tracy Johnson, Senior Scrutiny Officer. Over to Tracy, thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. So the committee's next meeting is the 21st of June. This will be the first meeting after the council's elections. So the purpose of this meeting will be mainly around induction for new members. So there's planned to have an induction around the council's flood risk roles and responsibilities, an introduction to the role of the Environment Agency, introduction to the role of Anglian Water and the Section 19 investigations. For the September agenda, I'll add the Development Fund update that was requested earlier in the meeting. And we also have a few items listed under items to be scheduled, which I'll work with David and Paul, look to when would be suitable to add those onto. But that's it. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Tracy. Any comments, Robert?
None received, Chairman.
So can I ask that the work programme be approved? Do we have any dissent?
None indicated, Chairman.
I think it must be early bath time then. I'm sorry it's gone on a little bit this morning, but I thank you all for the depth of the debate. I thank all of our officers, Tracy, Rachel, for their support, and I can't really say a safe journey home because we're there already. But thank you very much.